Brian Hallett here with Pro Video Coalition with Dominic from Panavision. Why have you guys gone smaller?
Larger cameras have a harder time getting inside gimbals, drones, and so on.
A lot of support needed for the bigger cameras.
Right. So a smaller body can fit into smaller locations. So car mounts, drones, gimbals, all of the smaller form factor things, you need a smaller body. So we had to come up with something that was a smaller and a more affordable rental camera for that matter.
But we're not just talking cameras. We're not just talking, here's the camera done. We're talking like viewfinder. We're talking like, I see you got the red phone here operating it.
So, and it's not just necessarily a red phone, it's the fact that we can actually do an Android app now. So DxL Control is now available on the Google Play Store, as well as it is on iOS. The upside now is it's a cross-platform, right? So now any Android device can do that. The other side of that is that Android can actually hardline over to the camera, and now we can have a wired connection with your phone. One of the big things about Panavision stuff is the modularity. We now are porting out everything capable out of this camera that is possible in a DSM-C2 into the module itself. Most of the modules until recently only had one video out. We would DA that output, but the problem is if you're having to do log and a look, you only had the one output.
Yeah, and you don't want to send a log to the director's viewfinder.
Correct. So now we actually have two independent outputs, and then we DA'd them. So we actually have 4 HDSDI outputs on this. I spend a lot of time trying to figure out how to do transitions faster. And what I mean by that is we want to transition from studio mode to handheld, or studio mode to Steadicam, or Steadicam to handheld. So one of the things we've done is the camera sits on a Steadicam dovetail, but it's a very short one, and you may not come up with balance. So we've come up with a longer Steadicam dovetail. Now, we've also increased the height, because our current one wasn't really fitting a Betz Tools top stage very well. Okay. This allows us to fit that stage with no problems and no interference. But we also added the feature that we now can slide side to side on this plate, allowing the operator a little bit more range and balance. The changeover is extremely fast.
How long are we talking? We're talking seconds?
It's off, and then if this was on the rig, it would pop back on.
That's fast. And if you pre-balanced your rig, you're ready to go.
Right, and then that stays on the rig. So every time you change back over, you're in that beginning position all the time.
And then we also have the viewfinder here, which is it's the same viewfinder?
It's the same viewfinder as the DxL, which is a HDR, which is an HDR 600 nit viewfinder. So basically, it's 6 times brighter than any of the other viewfinders on the market. To date, it is still the only HDR viewfinder in the cinema world.
And again, if you go from one camera to the other, you're seeing exactly what it's going to be there. You use no changing, no have to remember this setting is different. That's so frustrating.
It is very frustrating. And right now, all of these cameras look exactly the same. And I'm totally right, even to date. If you look through this viewfinder, you look out to the real world, it looks the same because it is in HDR. So we have an HDR onboard from Adamus. We have our HDR viewfinder. We're viewing HDR above us. We have HDR carts over here, and we have HDR post-production over here.
What is the basis? What are we building around? I know
We're building, in this particular case, we can mount a Dxl-M around any DSM-C2 body, whether it's Gemini, Helium, or Monstro. We will start off with all our Monstro bodies because it uniform and fits in with all of our DxL cameras. But if the need arises, we can put it on any of those DSM-C2 bodies. On DxL, people were saying, well, it seems long, I don't think I could get balance on it. And so we added the battery elevator to it.
Oh, wow.
And last year, we showed a module on the back of a DSM-C2 body, and that was the first thing people asked. Well, is the battery elevator on there? And it wasn't. So we went back and added that on there. So
explain for someone who doesn't know why that's a big deal, why it is.
Okay, so as cameras get built up, the center of gravity tends to start to rise. And when you put that camera up on your shoulder, it teeters. It doesn't feel comfortable. So if we quote from Aton,
great camera.
XDR Prods were wonderful cameras. And the reason is that they use the analogy of a cat on the shoulder. If you put a cat up on your shoulder and you grab their 2 front legs, that was their advertisement. And the idea is to wrap that camera and distribute the weight low on both sides of the body.
And it makes it easier to operate, it makes it more comfortable?
More comfortable, because now it's not teetering. Now you can concentrate on the shot and not fight balance of that. There's also an advantage on Steadicam. If you need to keep the post length short, If you drop this, you're now going to change the gimbal position relative to the top plate. As you shorten that, you'll be able to shorten the bottom of the rig. So now you can keep a very short, tight rig as well by changing the center of gravity on the camera body itself.